All right, welcome back everybody for another deep dive. And today we're looking at something pretty interesting.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a really thought-provoking idea for a lot of people listening.
absolutely.
And that is the idea that our weaknesses can be our strengths.
Right.
And to really go deep on this one, we're going to be looking at some ancient wisdom
Yeah.
as well as some modern examples of success and failure and everything in between.
I think what's most fascinating is that this idea that, our limitations can actually be our greatest strengths is not just some new age self-help trend. It's actually something that ancient wisdom traditions have recognized for centuries.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's this idea that, challenges or obstacles or things that we might perceive as limitations are actually opportunities.
Okay, so how does this advantage of disadvantage thing actually work?
Yeah.
Like, give us a real world example.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a really interesting example with dyslexia.
Okay.
Dyslexia is often labeled as a learning disability, right?
Yeah.
But studies have shown that a surprisingly high percentage of successful entrepreneurs are actually dyslexic.
Wow.
And the reason for this is because they've had to develop incredible problem-solving skills and learn to think outside the box, and they've built up this amazing resilience just to navigate a world that wasn't really designed for them.
So it's almost like they were at a disadvantage, but that disadvantage forced them to develop strengths in other areas.
Exactly. And those strengths then become the things that actually propel them to success.
It's fascinating.
That-
And, now that you mention it, I've definitely heard that Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Group,
Yes.
he's dyslexic.
Yeah, he's very open about his dyslexia. And in fact, he's talked about how it actually forced him to delegate and build strong teams very early on in his career,
Right.
which became a key to his success.
That makes sense.
And he had to create systems that worked around his dyslexia, but those systems ended up benefiting the entire company.
It's like you turned a perceived weakness into like a system for success. Are there other examples of that kind of thing?
Yeah, there are tons of examples. One that I find really inspiring is Temple Grandin.
Okay.
She's a renowned animal scientist, and she's autistic.
Okay.
And, her autism gives her a unique way of thinking, and that led to some really revolutionary designs for livestock handling facilities.
Oh, wow.
It's really amazing what she's been able to do, and it just goes to show that sometimes our greatest strengths come from really leaning into those things that make us different.
It seems like the message here is don't try to fit in.
Right.
Embrace the things that make you unique.
Exactly.
And those things that you perceive as weaknesses might actually be your biggest assets.
Yeah, I love that.
It makes me think about the idea of failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of counterintuitive.
Right.
We're usually told to avoid failure at all costs.
Yeah,
But I've heard a lot about how failure can actually be essential for success.
absolutely.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, think about Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
The light bulb?
Mm-hmm.
It's a famous example.
Yeah.
I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. It's that persistence in the face of setbacks. And that concept is actually echoed in a lot of ancient texts, too.
What kind of ancient texts are we talking about?
Well, the Bhagavad Gita, for example,
Okay.
emphasizes detachment from the outcome of our actions. So it's not about avoiding failure, but it's about learning from it.
How does that connect with more modern ideas of success?
It's interesting because a lot of companies today, like Google
Okay.
and SpaceX,
Right.
they have what they call a fail fast philosophy.
What does that mean?
It means they encourage experimentation. And they accept that not everything they try is going to work out.
Okay.
The key is to analyze those failures, make adjustments, and move forward quickly.
So it's about seeing failure as data, not as defeat.
Exactly. It's like a feedback loop.
Right. But isn't that risky for some businesses? Like, how do you balance that fail fast mentality with the need to actually, make money?
It's a good question. It's about calculated risks.
Right.
You don't want to just be reckless,
Right.
but you want to create a culture where people are encouraged to experiment
Mm.
and where learning from mistakes is prioritized.
So it's not about failing. It's about learning.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. All this talk about reframing things and seeing things from a different perspective
Yeah.
reminds me of another concept that seems kind of paradoxical at first,
Okay.
which is finding calmness through action.
Right.
We usually think that, relaxation equals peace.
Yeah.
But how does action lead to peace?
Well, the Bhagavad Gita talks about karma yoga.
Okay, what is that?
It's the idea of engaging in purposeful action without being overly attached to the results.
Mm.
And that can actually lead to a deeper sense of inner peace.
So how can people listening apply this idea of karma yoga to their own lives?
Well, think about the tasks that you do each day, you know? Are you just going through the motions? Or are you fully present in each action? Karma yoga encourages us to find meaning and purpose even in those really mundane tasks.
That's interesting. So it's not about doing less, it's about being more present in what you're already doing.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that even modern psychology kind of supports this idea.
How so?
There's this concept of flow state.
Oh,
Have
yeah.
you heard of that? It's
Yeah.
that feeling of being completely absorbed in a challenging activity.
Yeah.
And it's often linked to feelings of peace and satisfaction.
It's like when athletes are in the zone
Exactly.
or surgeons in the operating room.
Yeah, it's that intense focus. That can actually bring a sense of calm.
That's really fascinating. So we've talked about turning weaknesses into strengths.
Yes.
We've talked about finding peace through action.
Right.
And now I want to talk about the final and maybe most surprising piece of this puzzle,
Okay.
which is leading by following.
Ah, yes, this is a classic one.
How is that even possible? How can you lead by following?
Well, it's the concept of servant leadership.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah. And it's the idea that true influence comes from putting the needs of others first. So it's about empowering your team, removing obstacles, and creating an environment where everyone can thrive.
So it's less about giving orders
Right.
and more about providing support.
Exactly. Think of it like a really great coach.
Okay.
They're not just yelling from the sidelines, they're invested in the success of each individual player.
Right.
And they understand that the team's success ultimately depends on the well-being of its members.
Does this style of leadership actually work in the real world?
It does. There's actually a lot of research that shows that servant leaders create more engaged teams, higher productivity, and stronger organizations.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it's not just some, feel-good philosophy. It actually produces tangible results.
That's really cool. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From turning weaknesses into strengths to finding peace through action and leading by serving.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It's all connected. It's a lot to think about.
It is. And I would encourage everyone listening to really reflect on their own perceived weaknesses. Could they actually hold some hidden potential? Maybe that thing you've been trying to hide is actually the key to unlocking your greatest strengths.
That's a great takeaway. And for those who want to explore these ideas even further,
Yeah,
we highly recommend checking out the book, The Counterlogic Compass.
it's a great book. Really insightful.
Yeah, it offers practical guidance on how to apply these principles to your own life and work. You can find the Counterlogic Compass on Amazon and also on counterlogiccompass.com. It's available in print and ebook formats. So as you go about your week, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
What if the one thing you've been trying to avoid is actually the key to unlocking your greatest potential? Think about it. Until next time, keep diving deep.